Good Wednesday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Cavs getting ready for a must-win Game 5 against the Knicks. We'll talk a little bit about that later in the show. We begin, though, by talking Browns with Aaron Rodgers now in the AFC. AFC is loaded with quarterbacks, and some really good quarterbacks not going to be able to be part of the playoffs coming up. Take a listen to Colin Cowherd from The Herd on FS1 with Colin Cowherd, ranking the AFC quarterbacks.
But I'd put him 8 over Deshaun Watson, who's a bigger, better athlete. They've got a very good offensive line and an offensive coach and veteran weapons. So Deshaun wasn't terrible last year, but he was rusty. He won't be rusty. Again, they add Elijah Moore, but he's not really the guy. This team has a veteran wide receiver and a better O-line than Aaron Rodgers does.
So the full rankings go Patrick Mahomes 1, Joe Burrow 2, Josh Allen 3, Justin Herbert 4, Trevor Lawrence 5, Aaron Rodgers 6, Russell Wilson 7, Tua 8, Deshaun 9. Let's welcome in Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dawgs podcast, as well as Network 216. So Colin's kind of being Colin. Some of those rankings are a little interesting.
Yeah, Dave. I mean, Pat Mahomes, Burrow, 1 and 2. You got me there. Josh Allen being 3 makes sense. Herbert. I think the first 4 make a lot of sense in his rankings. Then you put Trevor Lawrence at 5, which is interesting, especially with Rodgers coming into AFC. I can understand the process in making Deshaun Watson 9th based off last year. But if you're doing this based off what we've seen from him throughout his career, Deshaun Watson, you could make the argument, is probably just under Aaron Rodgers. So if you put Aaron Rodgers at 5, you could put Deshaun Watson at 6. I think that's probably where I would have it right now. But it is Colin being Colin, and it's going to be, I think, pretty funny when in the middle of the year he has a segment where Colin is wrong. And I think he might have to adjust those rankings just a little bit.
Yeah, and before any fans get all worked up, Colin Cowherd is also the guy that 4 or 5 years ago said this about the face of the NBA.
For the first time in 10 to 12 years, I look at the NBA, which I've watched for 4 decades, and I say this now with Ben Simmons. Hey, LeBron, we're good, bro. You can go. You don't have to. You can hang around. Still great, but you can go. We're all good here.
Among bad takes, that ranks pretty high on the and listen, everybody does it, but that one stands out.
Yeah, the Ben Simmons one, that will forever be something that Colin Cowherd will actually be able to laugh about one day, because it's unfortunate what's happened with Ben Simmons. But yeah, that never made sense to me, because LeBron could already shoot coming out of high school. I mean, he wasn't a prolific, as much of a shooter as he is now, but Ben Simmons has never throughout his career been a shooter whatsoever. But like you said, Dave, that kind of thing makes you chuckle a little bit. So yeah, take Colin's rankings with a grain of salt. It's all fun. We're in the off season right now, and we're looking for things to talk about.
All right, along those lines, draft coming up tomorrow, first round. Browns won't participate until the 3rd round. What do you think happens? You know, you look at this roster. They need defensive tackles still. They've addressed it. It's not as bad. It's not as glaring of a need as it was, but they still need some more. What do you think? What do you think happens there?
I think that the Browns are going to look to bring in Al Woods after the draft. I think they want to see how the draft shakes out. And with the Jets already adding another defensive tackle, and that is where Al Woods visited the Jets also. They already added a tackle. Some say they're going to add another defensive tackle. But I think the Browns add Al Woods as a veteran. If they don't add him, I do think they're going to add another veteran to that room. I think they're only going to draft one if the board falls a certain way for them, because I don't know how many young defensive tackles that you just want to keep adding to the roster. It's all going to depend how the board falls. Mora Ojimo out of Texas is a guy I really like. Zach Pickens is someone out of South Carolina. Jordan Reed from ESPN mentions that's one of his favorite overall prospects at the position. Trevon Dexter, the Browns have been linked to a lot. it's just all going to depend on how the board falls, because the last thing we want, Dave, I agree they need a defensive tackle, but I think what we need more than anything else is we need another veteran in that room with Dalvin Tomlinson. And then first and foremost, you never want to draft necessarily for need and reach for a draft pick. So they're going to let the board fall to them. And if they can get a guy they believe is a good fit, I think they're going to end up selecting them. But I do think the Browns add at least 2 more defensive tackles before training camp.
Do you think it could very well be Al Woods? That's somebody we know they've had in. They didn't dismiss signing him. They said, we're not ready to sign him at this time.
Yeah. I think they really like Al Woods. A lot of people are worried about his age, 35 years old. I wouldn't really be worried about that. You just look at his production he's had, even with Seattle last year, very productive player. More of a rotational guy, but again, still a veteran there that's been around for a long period of time. And I think the Browns do want to add another guy like that to that room, because right now, the only veteran defensive tackle really you have is Dalvin Tomlinson. I mean, you can make the case for Jordan Elliott because this will be his 4th year there. But Jordan Elliott has an uphill battle to make this roster. So I think they're going to look to add another veteran, and Al Woods does make the most sense.
You also have Hurst and Hill, and, we'll see. Those are guys that Jim Schwartz is going to approach this a little differently. It's important to understand that as well. You're going to have guys that you rotate in. You're going to see more guys playing fewer snaps.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you want. You don't necessarily want a guy that has to play 500 snaps. If you have guys like that can rotate in and out, ideally that's what you want. I mean, if you look at the Buffalo Bills, who some consider have one of the best defensive lines in the AFC, that's what they do. I mean, their stats, they didn't have anyone that really led that line. They kept rotating guys in and out, and that's ideally what you want for the Browns to be able to do, especially at the defensive tackle position. It's been an area of need for a while, and I do think before training camp, it will be fully addressed.
Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dawgs podcast, as well as Network 216, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll hear from Andrew Berry, lessons he has learned as a GM. Plus, we'll do our own mock draft. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
Sports for CLE continues. We continue talking Browns with Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dawgs podcast, as well as Network 216. Andrew Berry was on the Sumer Sports podcast talking about what he has learned in his time as an NFL executive.
I think it's actually the biggest lesson that I drew from probably the greatest moments of adversity, which have been my biggest learning stretches throughout my career, is really what you touched on, just a few minutes ago, like the idea of alignment. What I've seen at, quite honestly, various stops, the places where we've had the most success, people have been on the same page with both football philosophy and how people are going to work together on a day-to-day basis in football operation. That doesn't mean that people always agree, but there's just a pretty clear philosophy. Hey, this is how we operate, and this is how we believe in winning. When things haven't gone as well, and whether it's both results on the field or probably, quite honestly, the thing that hurts the most is just how things maybe went in the building and how relationships deteriorated, and it made it difficult for really just everyone involved. It's been this misalignment of both football philosophy, how people treat each other, and how people work together.
And Tyler, it's interesting to hear him talk about alignment. That was something we have heard with him and Kevin Stefanski from the very beginning.
Yeah, and I think even when the Browns were looking for a new head coach after Freddie Kitchens, and we heard the name Stefanski, Andrew Berry brought up, Jimmy Haslam, as the owner, they were talking about alignment and how important that was, and that's really what they were looking for, and they believed they had in Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry. And I do agree with what he is saying. That is very important for any organization. If you're not aligned, what you're going to have then is you're just going to have a bunch of chaos within your building. That's when you have a bunch of leaks to the media. That's what we saw, I believe, a lot with John Dorsey. We constantly saw things leaked to various members of the media, whether it's players the Browns are interested in, trade rumors, whatever it might be. And you're seeing it with other organizations throughout the NFL. When you have that alignment, though, and you have that close-knit group, I think it's just really beneficial. And the Browns are going to see that. Again, we've had some tough stretches here, especially a lot of circumstances the Browns have had to deal with. But I do believe with Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski, the Browns have that alignment, and we just have to hope that continues to improve this year.
All right, time for a mock draft that you and I are going to do. Now, this is going to be a mock draft simulation for the third and fourth rounds. We'll do those 2 rounds. We're going to use Pro Football Network's. Now, we have proposed a trade. We are sending 74, 111, and 142 to the Detroit Lions for the 55th pick in the draft. So we're giving up our first pick in the third round, our first pick in the fourth round, and a later round pick to get 55. Let's take a look at the Lions have accepted the trade in this mock draft simulation. So the name that I was hoping would be there is there. So the decision becomes, do you want Jack Campbell, linebacker from Iowa? Do you want Hyatt, wide receiver from Tennessee? Jack Campbell's the guy I was hoping, and we did this 3 times twice. Jack Campbell wasn't there. He's there in this simulation. So who you picking here? I'll defer to you with pick 55.
All right. Well, Dave, I'm with you on Jack Campbell 100% here. And every mock that I have done, I have tried to trade up high enough to get him. 55 is normally as high as I can go until you start to really have to give up a lot more assets than you want. But 6'5", 249 pounds, 125 tackles this past year, 59 solo, 2 interceptions, 9.9 overall grade according to Pro Football Focus. He has everything you want in a linebacker. I mean, he is huge for a middle linebacker too. If you draft Jack Campbell here, and by the way, I don't believe he could, and it's not going to surprise me if he went to the Bills at the end of the first round, because they do need a linebacker to replace Tremaine Edmonds there. But Jack Campbell to me is a no-brainer here. And I will say, the caveat is you have to hope Jimmy Haslam doesn't get involved and want Jalen Hyatt. I'm serious with that Tennessee connection.
All right, so let's take Jack Campbell. So we have traded away the first pick in the third round. So we'll pick again in the 90s, right there. Yeah, we're not going to make any trade. We're not making any more trades. We made our trade for the draft, so we're going to dismiss those. All right, Brian, pull up the defensive side of the ball. Give us a look at who we have. You like anybody you see there? We're looking defense.
Let's see. Let's see if we can go edge.
All right,
who do we have an edge?
Pull up
currently?
the edge rushers.
They're ranking. See, when you look at some of these simulators, there's so much that they vary so much on various sites. Like, I've never seen DJ Johnson that high. So as far as the names that I've seen, I think I would go with Zach Pickens out of South Carolina, the defensive tackle.
So
he is a guy that's one of Jordan Reed's favorite players.
All right. Let's look
in this draft. And he fills an immediate need for the Browns. And like we talked about, Dave, you want to kind of let the board fall to you. And if he gets here, and again, he's another guy I don't think will get here, and I don't think Mora Orjamo will be here either. And I think the Browns would jump at that opportunity.
You see, Tyler Scott was taken right before them by Minnesota at 97. Let's just take a look at who the wide receivers that are available are. just for giggles there. Yeah,
Ooh, man.
I'm with you. I'm with you though. We'll take Zach Pickens there, and then let's see. We should have one more pick in the 4th round because we traded away one of those as well. Okay, so let's take a look at. We got Johnson, the running back from Texas. Who we got defensively? Hey, Chase Brown's there too, another running back. What about edge rushers? Let's take a look at our edges. Hey, Isaiah McGuire is still there.
Yeah, I'm a big Isaiah McGuire fan personally. We don't have an edge yet, and I feel like when you pass and you get this, I think edge they want to address very early in this draft. The reason we didn't at 98 is just because Pickens was there, and I don't think that's going to happen when it comes to the real draft. But in this case, I think Isaiah McGuire makes too much sense. He tests out exactly how you want. A really good RAS score. Age-wise, he's there. Productive player, played in the SEC. Andrew Berry, he's drafted a good amount of SEC players. I think Isaiah McGuire would be the pick here. And again, if you look further down the list, Yaya Diaby, I mean, I don't think he would be there, like having him at 198. But some of these guys, like I'm very questionable on Pro Football Network's rankings here because I don't see some of these players being there. Isaiah McGuire, to me, I think goes in the 3rd round, but I would take him if he is here.
All right, let's take him. So we come out of it with Campbell, Pickens, and McGuire, and I think if Andrew Berry could do that in rounds 3 and 4, I think he runs the cards up there and gladly does that. I think if you get those 3, I think you're in pretty good shape. You can set up and take a running back and a wide receiver a little bit later in the draft.
Absolutely. That's how I would probably set it up. I think the positions they want to address early in this draft, it's going to be unless a wide receiver falls to them, then in that case they could pull the trigger because, I mean, if someone's going to fall to you and it's someone you don't believe will be there, you make that pick regardless on what position you might really be targeting. But I think linebacker, safety, and defensive end, they want to address pretty early. If a D tackle falls to you, like in this case, Zach Pickens from South Carolina did, then you take them. But they're going to let the board fall to them. But I think those are the 3 positions they really want to address, if possible, before day 3 of the draft.
And, we did trade up. I don't necessarily think Andrew Berry, I think he's more likely to trade back than up. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think he trades up if the right guy is there, and I think Campbell would be potentially one of those guys. I don't think he gets into the 50s. Now, Trenton Simpson, the linebacker out of Clemson, who the Browns did have a visit with, top 30 visit, he's another guy that the only way I see him getting there is for them to trade up, but he's someone that I think could be available in the first 60 picks or so. Now, that's a scenario. If Andrew Berry really likes him, they could trade up for him. Other than that, I kind of agree. I think a trade back is more likely because what the Browns also will do at some point in this draft, if possible, and they're able to do so for the right value, they will try to accumulate picks for 2024 because right now I believe they only have 6 picks.
Yeah, I'm with you. So you think Campbell and Simpson are really the 2 guys, and in the other, we tried to get to 55 and 60. I think the Bears 64. Simpson was available when Campbell wasn't, so it's kind of interesting. But are those the only 2 you could see the Browns potentially moving up for?
I think so, unless maybe Keanu Benton out of the defensive tackle out of Wisconsin. It's to see the Browns trade for a D tackle would really surprise me. It would. I think they'd rather see how the board falls to them. And I think linebacker is more of a need at this point than defensive tackle. I mean, both are needs for the Browns, but the Browns have added Dalvin Tomlinson to the defensive tackle room. Right now at linebacker, you brought in 2 linebackers that are currently rehabbing from injury. So I would make the case that linebacker is probably the most pressing need on this defense. So I think if Simpson is in range, I think that is someone Andrew Berry's going to go and target because he falls within the age guardrails. His RAS score is well over a 9, and he has 4.5 speed. You pair him with JOK, oh man, they're going to be flying everywhere on the defensive on the defensive front.
Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dawgs podcast, as well as Network 216 and I. Going to step aside, take a quick time out. We head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason and take a look at who some national people think the Browns should target in the draft. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dawgs podcast, as well as Network 216. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey guys, Dan in Maryland. Just wanted to call in and ask about possible running back the Browns could draft. I see in a lot of the various articles and podcasts, nobody's talking about Evan Hull from Northwestern. Real productive back, 5'10", 210, 4.46, 40 at the combine. Was a productive running back in Northwestern's pretty poor offense. Even caught 55 balls last year, 33 the year before that. So he's also good in the passing game. Seems like most of the mock draft simulations I've run in PFN and PFF both have him going in the 7th round, or sometimes not even getting drafted. Dana Brugler has him listed as a 6th round pick. So it seems to me he could be a really good pickup late on day 3. Anyhow, let me know what you think. Go Browns. Bye.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Tyler, we put this in because I believe last time you were on, you were saying a late round pick made sense.
Yeah, that's a great voicemail, and we think alike there. I actually had a tweet that I was going to post later on Evan Hull because I'm a big fan, and I think he is absolutely someone you can get on day 3 of the draft. The grades for him don't look great on Pro Football Focus, and I think that's why in a lot of cases he has slid down, at least on their simulator and other simulators too, are the grades that he has. But keep in mind, he played for Northwestern, and they were a 1-11 football team this past year. Still had 914 yards, 4.2 yards a carry, 5 touchdowns. He also had 54 receptions for 536 yards. He was their entire offense. If he couldn't move the ball, they weren't going to be able to have really, I mean, they didn't have any success this year for the most part anyway, but they weren't going to be able to do anything on offense. Ran for over 1,000 yards in 2021. He's a very productive back. And if you can get him on day 3 of the draft, if the Browns don't take one earlier, and I do think they still could take one earlier if the right guy falls, Evan Hull is a great option on day 3 to look for. Contribute out of the backfield. He's like you said, 5'10", 209 pounds. Big fan of this kid.
So this is from DraftWire. Dream selections for NFL teams without a first-round pick in the 2023 draft. And for the Browns, they go Tyler Scott, wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bearcats, and they say it's at 74. For a team that lacked explosive plays through the air a year ago, falling in the bottom 10 of passing plays over 20 and 40 yards, grabbing a dynamic Tyler Scott would be best-case scenario. And again, I get the thought Elijah Moore and Marquise Goodwin should address that. 3rd round might be a little high for a wide receiver at this point. It depends on how high they view his ceiling. If you're going to take somebody at 74, you got to feel pretty good that they're going to develop into something. I say that Anthony Schwartz was a third-round pick and really hadn't worked out.
Yeah, with wide receiver, I think it's going to depend, kind of like we talked about when we were doing the mock simulator here. It's going to depend on who falls. If Tyler Scott's there, it might be hard for them to pass. I mean, he's got the speed. He's got 4.4 speed, which is what you look for. The drop rate, a little bit of a concern, but he also had one of the highest open rates of any college wide receiver last year at Cincinnati, 55% contested catch rate. And again, if he's there, Dave, I could see them doing it because he does meet the age profile they look for, the athletic profile they look for at the position. It's just all going to depend on who ends up going. And I think some of these receivers, Tyler Scott, Michael Wilson out of Stanford, Marvin Mims, some of these guys could be available a little bit later. And the Browns could even, if we talked about trading up from pick 74, they could potentially trade up from pick 98 if there's a receiver that falls and they like. I do think they're going to add one. 74 is high for me. It is, but it's all going to depend on what player is there at that time. Because I think Andrew Berry also could just go best player available. And if Tyler Scott's the best player on their board at that time, I think they could make that selection.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Nobody knows for certain how they view Scott, but if they take him at 74, they view him as somebody that can come in and contribute, not necessarily in a big way this year, but next year after. Let's take a look at this. So I know you tweeted this out. Browns could draft an offensive tackle to eventually replace either Jedrick Wills or Jack Conklin. Perfect selection. Guy from Brigham Young, 6'8", 302 pounds. Blake Freeland. What do you like about him?
So I love Blake Freeland's athletic profile, first and foremost. When you see a RAS score for an offensive tackle at a 9.83, that very much intrigues you, first and foremost. I think the fact that he also played right tackle at BYU, now he did that, I believe that was either his freshman or sophomore year, and then moved to left tackle, but he's proven he can play both positions. So I think that's very beneficial to have that type of versatility. And I like the mobility that he has at the position. And it kind of says that with his 40-yard dash time, if you look at his RAS score. So I love what he brings just as an athlete to the position. I think that's a guy that Bill Callahan could really mold. I mean, 6'8", 302 pounds. So what worries you a little bit is that frame. He needs to get stronger, put on some more weight. And you're playing at BYU, so you're not playing against the highest level competition. But nevertheless, I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. He didn't give up any sacks this past year. Only 3 quarterback hits allowed, only 4 hurries given up this entire year, and had a 90.9 overall grade. Again, the biggest thing you worry about is frame with him. At the next level, you worry about level of competition a little bit. But if you can get a guy that could potentially replace Jack Conklin, because I think the Browns need to be looking that way if they don't believe that's James Hudson. And even if, depending on the Jed Wills situation, we believe that they're going to pick up his 5th-year option, but that might be it. Or they could just decline it, and then you really need to decide who your future left tackle is going to be. Blake Freeland meets the guardrails they look for with age and athleticism profile. So if he's there at 74, this could be a dark horse pick for them too. It's not going to be the one that fans are very excited about, but it's Andrew Berry preparing for the future, and that's what you want to do as an NFL general manager. You don't want to be necessarily drafting for need. You want to draft for the future and plan your roster not only for 2023 but 2024 and beyond.
Yeah, and we still haven't heard. They have until May 1st to pick up that 5th-year option. Chase Young will not get the 5th-year option picked up from the Commanders. We found that out, so that's kind of interesting as well. Before I let you go, after the draft, some names of guys you think the Browns could look to add via free agency. So free agents after the NFL draft. Who do you think fits into that for the Browns?
First off, Al Woods. We talked about him earlier. Defensive tackle makes way too much sense. I think regardless if they draft an edge, I do think they would like to potentially add another veteran as a rotational piece, potentially. So Melvin Ingram is a name I'd watch. Justin Houston, those are older guys. They're not going to give you a ton of snaps, but that's not what you're asking for. When you're going out and adding a veteran, you're asking for them just to give you a couple snaps here and there. I think at safety, They could look at Rodney McLeod. He is still available as a veteran safety. He's going to be 33 years old. I think the Browns draft one, but I think they need to add 2 more to that room potentially. So that's who those are some names I could see, but either way, they will be adding some free agents after the draft. They're just waiting for this process. And then I think Andrew Berry is going to go ahead and make some more signings once he sees who he's able to acquire through the draft.
Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dawgs podcast, as well as Network 216. As always, appreciate the time and the insight. Good stuff. Thanks, Tyler.
Anytime, Dave. Thank you so much.
All right, Tyler Johnson. Make sure you check him out. Faithful Dawgs Podcast, Network 216. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We will continue talking Browns. Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yeah, hi, this is Ron from Cleveland. Do you think that our trade with the New York Jets to get Elijah Moore enabled the Jets to go ahead and get Aaron Rodgers, or do you think they would have made a trade with somebody else to do that? Thanks a lot, guys. Love your show. Love the Browns. Go boys. Roof.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus. Brad, I certainly think they facilitated. They would have figured out additional or other compensation, but that pick in the second round did get sent to the Packers. Having said that, I'd make that trade every day, every year. Elijah Moore to trade back 10, 20, 30 spots.
Yeah, so they definitely still would have gotten the deal done regardless. They actually already had the 43rd overall pick, so they had almost the exact same pick already in tow. But there is something we've talked about before on PFF called the endowment effect, and essentially an asset of your own you view as more valuable than someone else's asset. If a pick gets traded in the NFL, that pick is so likely to get moved again. And even this trade, that was not the only pick. The 170th overall pick that went from Green Bay to New York was also a pick they'd acquired, elsewhere. So it's very funny, but teams kind of view draft picks they get from other means as less inherently valuable than their own original draft slots.
Yeah, and again, points to Andrew Berry for figuring out a way to get a guy who gives them some skill set that they needed. I know you wrote an article, State of All 32 Teams Before the NFL Draft. For the Browns, remaining starter needs, none. And remaining depth needs, edge and safety. Take us through just kind of the thought process of what they need to do to build out this roster, or how the draft can augment the roster might be a better way to put it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So I believe they were the only team that got the honorable distinction of not having any starter needs. And look, if you're going to spend more money than everybody else, if you're going to be aggressive with how you use your draft capital, I think you should hopefully fall into that bucket. But they certainly do still need to add some depth. I think Andrew Berry himself has even come out and said they want to add more talent at edge, whether that's in the draft or in free agency after the draft, with a lot of those veterans usually signing after the draft is complete. I think they do need to add more along the defensive line, both at edge and on the interior. And then I do think some depth in the secondary, particularly at safety, as I mentioned, would not be a bad idea either. Obviously, we've seen what some injuries on the back end have done in years past. They've generally had 3 or 4 playable guys, and I think that's been a good thing for them, and they probably want to restock that as well. So those spots, maybe some more, wide receivers, wide receiver 4 type player as well. But yeah, I don't think you can look at this roster and say there's a quote unquote glaring need anywhere on this roster.
When you look at it, and I think we've talked about this before, but this is a playoff roster. Is it, in your mind, what should the goal be with this roster?
It has to be a playoff roster. And I know it's, tough in the AFC right now. You list the top 10 AFC quarterbacks, and Deshaun Watson's on that list, but it's a list that has a lot of really, really good players on it. And then obviously in the AFC North as well, sounds like Lamar Jackson will be back in Baltimore. So you're looking at a Pittsburgh Steelers team that refuses to go below 500, a Ravens team that's always does well, and of course the Bengals that are now looking like something of a power in the AFC. But all that said, not only do you have to make the playoffs, I think either win a game or be very competitive in that first round and maybe lose a 1-score game. But yeah, like I said to the previous question, you can't spend this much money and kind of mortgage your future both from a draft pick standpoint and a salary cap and cash standpoint, and not be at least moderately successful. I'm not going to try to get into predictions or anything like that, but if this team misses the playoffs, I wonder if there's a change at head coach, frankly.
Yeah, that's very fair. They have come out and said there are high expectations. So, again, one thing every team must do in the NFL draft from Pro Football Focus, Browns have to improve the run defense. 39.6 team run defensive grade, 4.8 yards average. Depth of tackle were both front 4 worst marks in the league. True nose tackle. What do you think they add? We have a couple of guys that are listed there, Ika and Isaiah McGuire. Take us through some names to listen out for that you think could be potential fits for what the Browns need to do.
Yeah, so I think the key there that the author pointed out, which is smart in my opinion, is when you don't have those early draft picks and you are picking at 74, look, in a general sense, you do early on, you want to go after premium positions. That would be, edge rushers and receivers and tackles and those things. And there becomes an inflection point where you can either take the 20th best player at the premium spot, or maybe you pivot and say, okay, look, our nose tackles like a Siaki Ika, the guy is massive. He's probably 360 pounds. Are those guys coveted, and should you take them in the top 50? Probably not. But can you get the second or third best nose tackle at 74 as opposed to, wide receiver 20? And within the context of the roster, would that maybe be a smarter thing? And I think that's where the answer is yes. So, Ika's a great pick. I'm not sure he's going to be there, but he would make a lot of sense. I think a guy like Gerard Clark from Coastal Carolina fits that bill as well. I think Isaiah McGuire will be around in the 3rd round. It would be a phenomenal pick as well. Big fan of his. Can set the edge, can rush the passer a bit as well.
So another thing from Pro Football Focus, one prediction for every NFL team in the draft, and this one's more of a question. Is defensive line or offensive weaponry more valuable right now for the Browns? Browns have some holes on the roster. Biggest decision likely makes the bigger impact, more bodies on the defensive line or another receiver to try and ensure Deshaun Watson rediscovers his play and has more playmakers. When you look at that, how do you weigh? How does Andrew Berry weigh that, do you think, in the draft? Is it dependent on skill set and the player?
Yeah, I think if the Elijah Moore trade does not happen, I'm answering this question differently. I truly believe that. And he may not be, some 1,000-yard receiver, but I think it still goes back to having tertiary weapons, having depth beyond just Amari Cooper. You have an emerging David Njoku. And I like Donovan Peoples-Jones, but I think he probably ideally is more of a wide receiver 3. But now hopefully he can be. And Elijah Moore is your power slot, a good player there that can do a lot of things, can get open. So I think they still should look for late-round flyers like a Donovan Peoples-Jones, but for me, it's adding depth along the defensive line. I think you just do want, Jim Schwartz, you look at Tennessee last year, I mean, they're 9-10 guys deep. They are rotating players. They want to keep legs fresh, be able to cycle in both edge rushers and interior players so they're more effective on a per-snap basis, and I don't see why he would change that philosophy, so I think they need to add more and more talent along that defensive line.
Yeah, I'm with you. Defensive linemen, it doesn't translate on TV the way that defensive linemen and offensive linemen beat up on each other in the trenches. I mean, it is really nasty in there, and if you can keep guys a little fresher and have them play a little less, I think that's a good way to go. Bleacher Report, draft day trades for every team, and I'm going to run this one by you. Browns receive 2023 third-round pick, which would be 99, 2023 third-round pick, 101, 2023 seventh-round pick, 222. 49ers get pick 74, not having a first or second-round selection. Team Brass seems fine playing long game, even discussing trading down as the most likely moves. And when Andrew Berry did discuss that, he said they view the draft from a longer lens. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so, the general philosophy of the buildings he's been involved with, Philadelphia moves both directions, but they do like to trade down and accumulate extra draft capital. He obviously worked with and hired Quezito Fomensa for a reason, and he comes from philosophies that feel the same way, traded down 4 times last year in Minnesota. So, I think it does make sense. If there's not a player they love at 74, realistically, especially in this year's class, you might get guys at 99 and 101 that you like, frankly, as much as maybe the players on your board at 74. On the flip side, though, you might also say, we could come away with this class with 0 players that can contribute in 2023, and I get the long-term view, but are we maybe afraid of doing that? So it kind of goes both directions. I don't think it's a terrible idea at all. I guess my counter would be, if you're going to do that, maybe try to get 2024 capital, because there is a devaluation of future picks. So maybe try to get a future second or a future third from a bad team or something like that baked into the equation if you are going to move down like that.
Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Try to uncover some hidden gems in the upcoming draft. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Even though I know we're not drafting them all, I think that we need to possibly pick up another big boy, another defensive tackle or two possibly, and also try to get some valid defensive ends. I know it's going to be later in the draft, but we need to find some hidden gems within, that later round. Just because looking at Jim Schwartz's defense with the Titans and stuff like that, the defense starts and stops with the defensive tackles and the end. So our defensive line has to be really, really good this upcoming season. So, yeah, go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Brad, some names of guys that you think would fit with the Browns, especially given what Jim Schwartz likes to do defensively?
Yeah, so if we're looking a bit later, let's say we're kind of looking at guys that we don't think are going to be there in the top pick of the draft. I think Isaiah Foskey from Notre Dame makes a lot of sense. A guy that I think could last into that range, a good player at Notre Dame, 6'5", 265 pounds, a bigger true 4-3 defensive end. I think he'd make a lot of sense. If we're looking on the interior, I think a guy like Kobe Turner from Wake Forest makes a lot of sense. A player that's been, shooting up draft boards or, whatever things you hear this year. Had a 93 run defense grade for us this past year. One of the best marks in all of college football. Not the biggest guy, but a guy you probably could coach up and build up a little bit. We talked about Siaki Ika. Another player, more of a pass rusher on the interior, but Moro Ajomo from Texas is one more name I think is interesting. And then we talked about Isaiah McGuire on the edge. One more guy. I think he's more of an interior 3 technique, but can play on the edge and can play on the inside, which is something we've seen Jim Schwartz do a bunch in Tennessee. Did it with guys like DeMarcus Walker, who's now a Chicago Bear. Is Carl Brooks from Bowling Green. Obviously, the local connection there. 6'4", 300 pounds. Played more on the edge in college. A good athlete, kind of a nimble for his size. I think he can move him all over the place, and I think he could be an interesting, probably not a guy that contributes right away, but an interesting player for 2024 and beyond.
Let me ask you this. Do you see the Browns taking a running back? And the reason I go there, Nick Chubb's great. I know they like Jerome Ford. Then you're getting to John Kelly and some guys that have been predominantly practice squad players. Do you think they take a running back? And who do you think is somebody in that 5th, 4th, somebody to listen out for Browns fans as a running back?
Yeah, I think they certainly could consider it. But, yeah, definitely later on. You don't want to use one of the earlier picks on the position. I think guys that kind of fit as a different type of player than a Nick Chubb, more of the Kareem Hunt type role. Chase Brown from Illinois has pass-catching chops. Can run some solid routes, nothing crazy, not a Christian McCaffrey, but, good soft hands, can make guys miss in the open field, and I think he'll be around in probably the 5th round. And Eric Gray from Oklahoma, similar, kind of build, a little bit not smaller, but not Nick Chubb. Again, a guy that didn't have as many targets in college, but when he did, was productive with the football in his hands. So those guys, I think, in that 5th round range make a lot of sense.
Before we take another timeout, so this best case and worst case scenarios for NFL teams in the draft. Again, for Pro Football Focus. Best case, Browns are able to trade up into the 2nd round for a receiver. Worst case, Browns don't add any pass rushers. The pass rusher one would concern me greatly. If they trade up, do you think it's necessarily for a wide receiver? I could see them doing it for certain linebackers as well. I think that's an area that, they could. It scares me because everybody's coming off an injury, I guess. Best way to put it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I agree with my coworker there. They should be trying to trade up and leverage more assets. But, yeah, I do think receivers make some sense. And I think there are going to be some solid linebackers that finally start coming off the board in the 2nd round. I think we're not going to get any in the 1st round. Drew Sanders out of Arkansas is a guy that a lot of people like. They can rush the passer a little bit. Kind of a, tweener pass rusher type, linebacker type. Jim Schwartz, again, does love blitzing his linebackers a lot. Had David Long last year in Tennessee get after the quarterback a decent amount, on spot blitzes and stuff like that. So, yeah, maybe if one of those guys falls, you make a move up there. But it is one of the weaker position groups in the class.
Brad Spielberger and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we will take a look at some of the guys that have been identified as perfect fits for the Browns. We'll get Brad's thoughts on a couple of them in rounds 3, 4, and 5. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery, partners in education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus. One player in each round of the draft that is perfect fit for the Browns is from Doug Poundaley. In round 3, they go with defensive tackle Garvon Dexter from Florida. Round 4, an edge rusher, Isaiah McGuire from Missouri. And in round 5, a linebacker, Dorian Williams from the Tulane Green Wave. Brad, let's start with Dexter. Do you think Dexter fits kind of the profile, and what are the chances he's there at 74 if the Browns stay there?
I love all these picks. I should have mentioned Dexter's name to the prior question. I think he definitely fits that mold. Is another big body on the interior that I think probably should be there. I think he will go off the board right around that 74th pick. So yeah, that would make a lot of sense. He fits in that, that tranche of big bodies on the inside that honestly I think could make him a decent amount of noise in his first year, in a limited role, early down capacity. But I think could become a really good player.
We talked about McGuire, so I know you think he fits, and if he's there in the 4th round, you probably think it's a slam dunk. What about Williams? If Williams is there in the 5th round, is he somebody that you could see fitting in with Jim Schwartz and what he likes to do?
110%. I think one of these sleepers in this class. I went to Tulane Law School, so I'm a touch biased, perhaps. But Dorian Williams, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of this class overall at linebacker. He's rangy, he's athletic. I think more for him, it's like learning the NFL game, having football slow down a bit for him as he comes along and just learns all the nuances and intricacies of football. But I think he is one of those guys you take a bet on, you buy in on the traits, the athleticism, and you see what you can get out of him. I think that would be a great pick as well.
Before I let you go, let me ask you, a tight end from Old Dominion that is intriguing athletically, Kuntz, does he fit? Do you think if he's there in the 6th, 7th round, could you see the Browns taking a shot on him? I know he was hurt, but his workout and his athleticism kind of scream something that would work with a Deshaun Watson type of quarterback.
Yeah, I would hope he's there in the 6th or 7th round. I wouldn't count on it, but I guess the one angle to maybe why he would be is because there are so many quality tight ends in this class. So maybe the position starts to move down the board a little bit because there's so much depth. But yes, I do, and I think it would be smart to get a potential succession plan in place, or even just get a quality 3rd tight end in the building. There's nothing wrong with that in this offense that loves to run out of a lot of 12 personnel. So yes, I'm all in favor of that. I wouldn't expect him to be there in the 6th or 7th, though, unfortunately.
Brad Spielberger, Pro Football Focus, as always. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much for taking some time. I know you're busy with the draft, and I'm sure we'll be bugging you next week, week after. Thanks very much, Brad.
Thank you.
Brad Spielberger, make sure you check him out. Always really good stuff with Pro Football Focus. Cavs getting ready for a game tonight, Game 5 against the Knicks, a game that it's not hyperbole to say they have to win. Donovan Mitchell talking about trying to keep the season alive tonight.
It has to, otherwise we'll be having the end of year press conference right here. You know what I mean? So we're just gonna go out there, give it our all, and go out there and do what we've been do what we do. At the end of the day, we win one game at a time. I can't sit here and say what this next game does if we win or lose. It's just we gotta win this game, figure out a way, and by any means necessary.
You guys have been such a tight group, so with, I guess, the backs on the wall, so to speak, right now, does it kind of bring you even closer?
This is like, you're in a dogfight. You're in a hole, and how do you dig out of it? You know what I mean? Like I said, the character of our group, the makeup of our group, I believe that we'll all do our part come tomorrow. But like I said, we just got to worry about one game, one night, 7 o'clock tomorrow. Just be ready for it.
How would you describe the vibe around the team right now?
Loose, not typically people think, you're down 3-1, it's supposed to be quiet and tense, and, you know, it kind of works the other way. Just loose and understanding that, like, you know, we're playing for our season. We understand what's at stake, but there's no need to put that added weight, that added pressure. You know, we've had 2 days since the last loss. We understand what happened in game 3 and 4, so we got to go come here out tomorrow and take care of business. But for us to sit here and, you know, you see Isaiah right here, for us to sit here and, you know, kind of dwell on that for 48 hours, you know, it doesn't really help the cause. We got to go out there and understand. We understand what's at stake and do our work and be ready for it tomorrow.
So tonight, 7 o'clock, Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. Cavs trying to make it 3-2 in this series, send it back to New York. The question for J.B. Bickerstaff, what do the Cavs need to do to come away with a win? What do they need to do better?
We got to be more physical and we got to be more active. I think it's that simple. In game 2, you know, we won the rebound battle and we won the game. And in game 2, you know, we were as aggressive as I've seen our group be, and it wasn't just one guy. You know, everybody on the floor was physical and making contact, and that's what we got to do. You know, you got one game to play, and you know, you got to leave it out there.
How do you assess Evan Mobley through 4 games this series?
I think he's gotten better every game. You know, I think he has a better understanding of what playoff basketball is. You know, I think going through it, understanding, you know, what the different atmospheres are going to be, the level of intensity, you know, playing at home versus playing on the road. But I think as he's gone on, he's continued to get better.
You and the guys have talked about learning lessons throughout the course of the playoffs. Like, if there's something that you want him to learn through the first 4 games and take into game 5, what is it specifically?
Being aggressive. You know, when he catches that ball, being attack-minded and making the play that the defense tells you to make. But you know, every time you catch it, the first thing you got to do is look at the rim. You look at the rim, and then you make the decision on what's next based on where the defense is. So we just want him to continue to be aggressive and continue to make the right play.
And really, that's the thing that the Cavs were not in the last 2 games. They were not aggressive. Be aggressive, and Evan Mobley's quicker than whomever is going to guard him. Find the mismatch, be aggressive, take advantage of the mismatch. That's playoff basketball, and the Cavs have not played to their mismatches against the Knicks. And they have a couple of them. They just haven't exploited them. Well, some exciting news for the Guardians. Another one of their young pitchers with a really good outing. Started out well for the Guardians as well. Bottom of the first, Josh Naylor gone to the seats in right field. A 2-run shot made it 2-0. And then Tanner Bybee making his major league debut was really good. 5 2/3 innings, just 1 earned run, 8 strikeouts, no walks, 6 hits allowed. He gets the win in his major league debut. Tanner Bybee, 5 2/3 to get the win. And take a look at this tweet from Zach Mizell. When you look at major league debuts for the Cleveland Guardians or the Indians, most strikeouts in a Cleveland pitcher's debut ever, 11 for Louis Tiant, 10 for Tristan McKenzie, 9 for Herb Score, and then 8 for both Tanner Bybee today and Logan Allen on Sunday. So a couple of guys win their major league debuts and do it in impressive fashion. Terry Francona also tweets out that the plan is for Tanner Bybee to stay with the big league club. He becomes the 12th Guardians pitcher this year to win a game. So the Guardians have won 12 games. 12 different pitchers have won games for him. Tanner Bybee and Logan Allen, really good major league debuts. So now they need Zach Plesac, Cal Quantrill to pick it up. The other good news for the Guardians, Tristan McKenzie getting ready to throw a bullpen, so hopefully he's back in the next couple of weeks. Guardians need that pitching to get in line if they're going to get it done. 12 13 on the year, and again, 12 different pitchers have won a game this year for the Guardians this season. Again, Cavs getting ready for a game they must win to send the series back to the New York area. Cavs and Knicks tonight in Game 5. Cavs down 3-1, trying to become only the 14th team to ever come back from a 3-1 series deficit to win it. Right now, they're just trying to win Game 5 and send it back to New York. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.